In New York State, if you lose your housing case and the judge orders eviction, you can ask the court for up to a year to move. And all of it is on the landlord's back. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of the state of New York, and it's talking about how long and how slow the whole eviction process is. Okay, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And remember, when the eviction takes a long time, it's the landlord who has to pay so that the tenant can live for free. Now, I don't know what kind of society we live in where, hey, it's all right if one individual makes sure that the other individual gets to live for free. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. Instead, maybe the person should pay their own rent. If the government is so concerned about people not being able to move or not being able to find somewhere to live, maybe the government should come up with the money. I don't think that. I don't think that we need to pay higher taxes so that some people can live off of the government. That's dumb as well, okay? Both of these situations are dumb. The only real situation that I agree with is the person who isn't paying the rent needs to go and find somewhere either that they can afford or, just they're out of luck. That's it. All right. I don't agree with the landlord subsidizing this person's housing forever. I don't believe in the landlord making sure that, they pay for this person's housing so they don't end up homeless. We're not a homeless shelter. I don't agree with the government paying for this person's housing for the rest of their life, which is the case in so many situations. So, yeah, it's a ridiculous thing, right? Long, slow eviction process in New York State. That's why I say, if you're a person considering, if you don't already have investments up there, if you're considering becoming a landlord, make sure that you really know what you're getting into. Read all the nightmare stories that other small mom and pop landlords have gone through. And then consider, maybe you could buy a property somewhere else. Anyway, let's get to this article and see what it says. Oh, but I forgot one thing. Before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So, if you're a small mom and pop landlord, would you consider buying a property in New York State? Do you think that's a good investment? Now, when I say New York State, that could be anywhere within the state, not just New York City. That could be in upstate New York where the laws are a little bit different. But even in upstate New York, you're going to have this nagging worry that the laws are going to change for the entire state eventually. And they will. They absolutely will. I guarantee it. It's not going to be limited to New York City. It's going to eventually affect every corner of that state. So anyway, let me get into this article. This article is coming from cnynews.com, and it says, eviction process is longer than ever in New York State. Yeah, it is. And even with changes in laws to make it supposedly easier to remove squatters, I haven't heard yet if this law, if people have really dived into it and figured out if this law is actually going to be effective. So anyway, let's see what the article says. There is a new law in New York State that allows tenants to stay in the home they are renting even if they do not pay. The eviction process in most municipalities takes up to an entire year by the time you file, go to court dates, and then schedule an eviction. If you know anyone who owns a rental property, hopefully things are going well. New York State has put a ton of new laws in place that makes things more clear in a ton of different aspects of the landlord-tenant relationship. We just went through with a process that took nearly 1 year. Here are some of the reasons that might hold up an eviction notice in New York State. Yeah, and I have heard nightmare stories. We've all read the nightmare stories. I've covered articles about the nightmare stories, right? But what I really like to hear about is just the process for just a regular eviction for a normal landlord. How long does it take? As compared to a place where landlords are treated better. In some states, it take a month, 1 month at most to get somebody up out of the property. And in other places like New York State, on average, what is the average length of time it takes to remove a tenant? And that's the real question. And you know, the information is not going to be very easily accessible because it looks bad. It looks very, very bad. And part of the thing too is that a lot of landlords, they've given up hope on the eviction court actually helping them, and they're just saying, hey, I will pay this tenant to get the heck out of my property so that I can re-rent it. And they're paying out, you know, 5-6 figures in some cases to get tenants up out of these properties. And, you know, that's awful. That's absolutely awful that a landlord has to go through that, but it's cheaper and easier to do that versus going through the legal process. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I don't blame anybody for doing it. I don't. I absolutely do not. But it shouldn't have to be that way. If you have someone who is a horrible tenant, look how long they can legally and technically live in your rental unit. The new Attorney General, Letitia James, has a section outlining new protection for evictions according to the New York State website. If you lose a housing case and the judge orders your eviction, you can ask the court for up to 1 year to move if you can show that you cannot find a similar apartment in the same neighborhood. The judge will take into account your health conditions, whether you have children enrolled in school, the hardship on the landlord if you remain, and any other life circumstances that could affect your ability to move. So basically, what they are saying right there is you can come up with an excuse of, oh no, I can't find a similar apartment in the same neighborhood for the same rent. You know, in the case of rent control, that's going to be darn near impossible, especially in places like Manhattan. Okay, so they're putting landlords in a very bad situation right there. You can say, oh, my kids are enrolled in school and they shouldn't have to leave school. Yeah, well, you know what? Most evictions happen for non-payment of rent. So if you have to move because you didn't pay the rent, that's your fault, not the landlord's fault. And then they're like, oh, well, the landlord can take the loss. See, and that's part of my problem. He's like, well, if the landlord has the ability to take the loss, so it's okay to steal from somebody if that person is rich. That's what they're saying right there. And who defines what rich is? Rich is anybody who makes more money than you. To a poor person, rich is anybody who makes more money than you. If you're a poor person, you make 20 grand a year, well, this person over here makes 50 grand a year is rich by comparison, right? So it's okay to steal from that person, right? Right? That's what the law says. No, it's a joke. It's a complete travesty of justice, as I say. And you know what? I believe that personally, it's going to drive a lot of people out of business when they're doing things like this. So who are we left with? We're left with very, very large landlords who do have the ability to wait over a long period of time, take losses on part of their portfolio within the city when they are making a ton of money on the other part of their portfolio, which might be in a completely different state. You know, it might be, hey, 50% of our properties are in Texas, in Houston and Dallas, and they're making us buku bucks, right? Well, 10% of our properties are in New York City, and they're losing us money every single month, but we will make our money back in appreciation 20 years down the line. You know, I don't know. I mean, I've heard of crazy stuff like this before, where these businesses, they realize, hey, we need a tax write-off, so we're going to show that we're losing money on our apartment buildings up here, and that will be a big enough tax write-off to make the whole investment worth it. Oh, what a joke. Anyway, if you're a landlord up in New York, man, you know, I feel for you, okay? I feel for you right now.